Now, first of all, before we get to a couple of stories I want to talk to you about, slightly outside of your remit, but we thought we'd try you on some pastures new. Why not? But this is familiar territory for you, at least the topic is. We have a friend of the show, a guy called Liam T, who lives in Folkestone. Who gets irritated by all the migrants he sees docking in Folkestone Harbour. He sees them being put into hotels, he sees them being given free driving lessons, and he puts in freedom of information requests. Now, one of the things he's been noticing over the years, particularly recently, is that quite a few kids turn up, little kids. Now, some of them obviously turn up with their real mums or their real dads, maybe sometimes both. But he says that quite a few, as far as he can work out, they're unrelated to the adults that they arrive with, which begs the question, what's going on here? You know, are these adult migrants using these kids as props somehow or other? You know, I've got a little kid here, you can't refuse me entry, you know, suffer the child and all that. Or is it just that these kids need some grown-up to help them come across? Either way, he put in a request to the Home Office saying, could you tell me over the last year the number of kids who've turned up with adults to whom they are unrelated? The Home Office wrote back saying, we can't help you there because the number of children who arrive in the exact number of children who arrive in this fashion is low, and therefore if we give you the number that will help to identify them. I don't see how that follows at all.
No, it makes no sense.
And it also it is, when they say the numbers are low, why should we accept their value judgment of what low is? This is an abuse of the FOI system, I think. But why do you think it is that the Home Office doesn't want to tell us this information?
Yeah, so first of all, great job to Liam. I think he's getting at the nub of something that's very important here in terms of why are so many children coming across with people that are so clearly not people that they're related to. And I think we're probably maybe starting to see the beginnings of another one of those kind of ruses that are sort of purported and attempted by individuals that are coming across the channel. Obviously, we know people claim that they're homosexual when they're not. They claim that they're adult children when they're not. They claim that they're Christian when they're not. And these are the kind of ruses that people are attempting. I think what we're probably starting to see here is adults realising that children are far, far, far more likely to be given that asylum status and that protection and that refugee status than adults are. Yeah. And therefore what we're probably seeing now is the start of adults sending their children first rather than the adults heading over to the channel first, and therefore they're more likely to be given that refugee status and can then send for mum and dad at a later date. Yeah. I think what Liam's encountering with the Home Office and with the FOI and the pushback is really indicative of the problem that we have in general when it comes to immigration, which is that A, the Home Office is really bad at keeping this data and actually is a really ramshackle organisation that is not fit for purpose. But secondly, they are well aware now that people are thoroughly fed up with the immigration experiment that's been going on, both legal and illegal, and are beginning to ask questions that would put them in quite an awkward position, and therefore they will pull every trick of the trade to be able to maintain this information, to conceal this information from the British public. Because
unofficially, the people at the Home Office, it seems to me, most of them, or maybe all of them, they see themselves as a sort of asylum-seeking facility operation, that they that they want as many to come in as possible. So when you get awkward people like Liam, and probably you as well, and maybe even me, they do as much as they possibly can to stymie us, to make sure we don't get this information. Because if, for example, they said, we don't know the numbers because they won't tell us, but if, for example, we said, oh, last year 6,000 came over, I mean, that would be an extremely worrying syndrome. And as you say, I bet you the number is going up and up and up. This could be the latest ruse. Grab yourself a kid and they'll let you in every single time. So the next question about these children is, are they there voluntarily? I mean, sometimes I guess it could be that some adult is just trying to help them get across. But more likely, in my view, it would be an adult using the kid to help them get in. So yeah, I mean, very worrying, and I think not acceptable that the Home Office won't tell us the numbers.
No, I don't think it. I think it is at all, and I think it's actually really inconsiderate and is doing a huge disservice to the taxpayer. This is the kind of conversation that we need to be having. I mean, this is now one of, if not the most important issue that voters care about, the kind of the channel crossings and the absolute sheer audacity of those individuals that are breaching our sovereignty, and therefore every nook and cranny of it does need to be explored. We have the right to be able to discuss these things freely, but for the Home Office to just sit there almost safeguarding and shielding this information from us leads to conspiracy theory. It leads to people starting to think, what is going on here, what is being hidden from us. And you know, it would be much easier for the civil servants that clearly view the British public with disdain, clearly think that, you know, Liam and myself and others such as yourself as well are just out to cause trouble and to make things a bit more difficult for their noble cause and their crusade that they're on. They think it's just, you know, better for everyone, better all around. It's a universal good to keep us in the dark, and you know, it's not on in this day and age.
Yeah, Tony Blair always said that his worst mistake was the Freedom of Information Act.
Well, I can well imagine.
You mustn't let the people know about stuff. Oh no, they mustn't have information. You know what they say, folks? Information is power. That's why they don't want you. These politicians don't want you to have information, because that will give you power. It will give people like Liam power, and people like
Heaven
Robert,
forbid.
people like Robert power, and even maybe people like me. They don't like this. Now, before we go to break, you know, this is probably slightly up your street. It's about the NHS and the number of foreigners. It's a ridiculous soft touch for foreigners who deliberately come over here on purpose to get some free treatment. So we have written off over the past year 250, or the NHS has written off 256 million quid's worth of treatment. So when, for example, a Nigerian comes over claiming, oh, I happened to get sick while I was here in Britain, please can you treat me, there should be a reciprocal deal whereby the Nigerian authorities pay for that, their citizens' treatment. But what happens is, and by the way, one freeloading Nigerian ran up £500,000 worth of health tourism on the NHS in London. Now, what's happening is these foreigners are turning up, having their treatment, and then disappearing. And frankly, who stands accused of this problem? It is, shall we say, liberal-minded NHS officials who don't ask too many questions. They just say, oh, the NHS is free, so please have your free treatment. Well, that's costing taxpayers a lot of money. Not acceptable again.
No, not at all. And I think you're absolutely right to highlight the difficulty that would ensue if any attempt was actually made to clamp down on this kind of stuff, and to say to someone that is here on a tourist visa or on a very temporary visa, you know what, you're probably not entitled to that kidney transplant, you're probably not entitled to that kind of elective procedure because you don't live here. That, I mean, to most people that would seem like basic common sense, that would seem like fairness. The NHS is there to serve the British public, not the world, effectively. But to many in the trade unions and to many GPs and doctors and nurses, their calling isn't to fairness, it isn't to the British taxpayer, it's not to the British public, it's to this kind of, again, higher crusade that they seem to think that they have. I mean, 256 million is actually, it's a staggering number, but I mean, the real cost of this is probably far, far higher when you consider the fact that foreign nationals, whether on tourist visas or short-term visas, incredibly entitled to GPs, to GP kind of treatment and to GP kind of consultations without the need to actually prove any residency, to have paid into the system at all as well. And what we need to get towards is we need to realise that our tourist visa system is being exploited left, right and centre. We need to start clamping down on those nationalities that show a pattern of using these visa routes to claim NHS treatment, and then we also need to start sending the bills straight to the capital cities of those countries as well, because we shouldn't have to be footing it. Well,
that's what we're supposed to do, but officials fail to properly check if people are entitled to free NHS treatment. Last year alone, 44 million quid went down the Swanee because of this. That's a 63% increase on the 26 million that hospitals had to write off in 2017. So this will be people who work for the NHS for whom this sort of free treatment at the point of entry is like a religion. So they just sort of philosophically don't want to ask anyone to pay for their NHS treatment. That's what's going on. So sort of liberal-minded NHS officials are letting foreigners rip us off to the tune of £256 million. It's not good enough, is it?
No, and there's nothing we can do about it. And it's a real shame, because when you look at NHS databases, you look at the information that the NHS has, there's a lot we can do with it to actually tackle the illegal migration crisis. We know that there are about 1.2 million illegal migrants in the country, and a lot of them will have to obviously go and receive some form of NHS care at some point in their lives. If that information was more readily available, and if we could start requiring that GPs or people working in the NHS start providing that information a bit more, and to start engaging with the Home Office and working in a more collaborative approach, we'd actually be able to make significant inroads into dealing with this illegal migration crisis as well. But unfortunately, as you identify, the kind of ideology that is pervasive in the NHS will make that very, very difficult, and there will be huge pushback at any attempts to
absolutely.
do so.
I think we should talk to some of these foreigners who've managed to rip off the NHS to find out what their secret is, because British citizens don't seem to even be able to get treatment from the NHS, but these guys, man, they're really coining 256 million quid's worth. Let me know what you think about that, folks. The NHS, they should be saying to everyone, look, the NHS will treat everyone, quite rightly so. We don't let people die or anything like that. But there is a system. They should be asked, if it's a foreigner, a visiting foreigner, where are you from? We need to talk to your government. We need to invoice your government, etc. The NHS just isn't bothering, and there go hundreds of millions of pounds worth of taxpayers' money. Yet again, a massive... The amount of our money that is wasted by these officials is just a national scandal. It really is.